Thank you. Yes, like a bad penny, I keep coming back. Thank you very much to all my guests. Thank you again to you lot for having us for what is the grand finale of this year's Bush Summit in New South Wales. So I hope you've enjoyed it so far. We've saved the best for last, obviously. As my beloved boss Ben said, Barnaby, I think a few of you might recognise, even without his hat, and Sarah and Jason and Craig and James. So if you'd like to scan your QR code, ask any questions. If there's someone in particular you'd like me to ask a question of, just pop their name there, or if you'd just like to ask it generally, by all means, I'll try and find the right person to put it to. As you may have noticed on the way in, energy is a pretty hot button issue these days for the country generally and for the bush in particular. And as I said in the previous session I had with Chris Minns, I know that there is very, very much a feeling that, you know, when it comes to the cost of energy transition and the hard work, the heavy lifting, it's that there's a sense in the bush that the city does all the talking and the bush does all the doing. So still, it is something we have to do. It is something the rest of the world is doing, and it is a journey we are on, boots and all. So we'll find out how we get there, and hopefully we'll all get there together and in one piece. But I might start with you, Sarah, the CEO of the Australian Energy Council. How do you see Australia placed to, I suppose, reach net zero, and how do you feel like the burden of getting there, if you like, and indeed the opportunities of getting there are sort of placed when it comes to that kind of city and country divide? If indeed there is a divide, maybe we really are all in this together.
Thanks, Joe. Australia is really well placed to reach net zero by 2050, and we are indeed already on that journey. We do have very specific challenges here in Australia. Our two major electricity grids are both basically islanded grids. That means, unlike Europe and the US and other countries, we don't have the advantage of relying on our neighbours next door to help us with generation. So that means we really need to be able to stand our grid on its own 2 feet and be able to be delivering reliable and affordable electricity to Australian homes and businesses all the time. And to date, we've done a really good job at that. What we are experiencing now, though, is a grid on the East Coast with ageing coal infrastructure and some gas infrastructure as well that needs to be replaced and will need to be replaced by renewable sources of energy backed up with storage solutions in order that we can continue to service customers when the wind's not blowing and the sun's not shining. There are huge challenges involved in that, and naturally these projects are being built in the regions because that's usually where the resource is and where the space is. But that, of course, means we're working through communities that are going to be affected by either the presence of these projects or the presence of transmission lines. So that is a challenge. I know the industry is really committed to working with communities and working with governments as well at a regional, state and a federal level to make sure we can get this done and bring people along with us.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I might jump straight into audience questions that are coming in, and do keep them coming. But Tim Ryan has written in, and he's got a question for you, Barnaby. And I suppose we heard a lot in the previous session. Everyone said, I'm all for net zero, but I don't want, the impact in my area is too high or the problems are too high. And Sarah will pass you the mic. But Tim has just said, Barnaby, is there a way to have successful renewable energy in the bush, and what is that pathway? So I suppose, are you on board with net zero in the first place? And if so, how do we get there, given that I suppose every farmer is going to say, well, I'm all for it, but the impact on my property is too great, or my community?
Okay, I'll be straightforward. I'm not for it if it's going to put you out of business and if it's going to absolutely take you backwards. So I'm putting Australians into sort of third world conditions where they can't afford their power bill. I'm not for that. I believe in opportunities for Australians and a standard of living for Australians. And what we have right now is that you have to believe it. Doesn't matter what the rhetoric is, doesn't matter what's set up here. Do you believe your power bills are going up or going down? They're going up. They're going through the roof. And the reliability is going through the floor. And the money, and this is the big swindle, is going overseas. Because they're overwhelmingly foreign companies. Now, we just can't say that we're on our way. I've sat through so many meetings with AEMO. We're closing down Hazelwood and have no effect. had a massive effect. Closing down northern power stations in South Australia, have no effect. Massive effect. They ended up with blackouts. And now Liddell, massive effect. You just can't do it. Now they want to keep Eraring open. Obviously, the penny's dropped. We shut down Eraring, lights go out. Snowy Hydro 2.0. Ladies and gentlemen, how do you think that's going? What a great idea that one turned out to be. $2 to $4 billion, and now it looks like it could be between $10 to $20 billion. And to do this 2050 job, we have to build one a year. I'll close on this. Net Zero Australia, Princeton University, Melbourne University, Sydney University, PhDs, know what they're talking about, pro-renewable group. The cost of, this is their figures, to get to the 2050-60 target, that's what they say, $7 to $9 trillion. That's $7 to $9,000 million, which, ladies and gentlemen, is more than the reconstruction costs of Western Europe under the Marshall Plan after the Second World War. They had hundreds of millions of dollars to pay for it, but guess who's paying for this? You.
Okay.